Time to check out A Stan Kraychik Mystery, Book 5. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1996. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 22. One way of careening from the sublime to the ridiculous in Key West is to go from Robbie's Terrace to the Paradise Deli on the other end of the island, or vice versa. Depending on what food means to you, Robbie's Terrace might challenge your culinary wits and your credit card. But the Paradise Deli could really work your alimentary canal. I pulled the Alpha into the deli's small parking lot alongside the only other car there, a misty champagne-colored Japanese touring sedan, like something an attorney might drive. It was 6 p.m., and I got to the door just as the owner was locking up. I pleaded with her that I just wanted something to go. In truth, I wasn't even hungry, but I knew I'd have to eat something sooner or later. The owner yielded to my pleas on the condition that I order a cold sandwich only. Inside, a television was blaring the 6 o'clock news. The 2 recent murders had been solved already, but I knew it was media peplum to assuage the fears of Key West citizenry. By the time the real tourist season arrived, the killings would be just another bit of island folklore. Was I the only person who wouldn't believe the culprit was a transplanted painter from Wisconsin with no motive? I ordered my sandwich and looked around the joint in a secluded corner of the deli, back where one of the workers had already begun washing the floor. A lone table was still inhabited by 2 people. The lingerers were Nancy L. Drew and Edsel Sham, together again. I aimed myself toward their table, stepping over the wet floor on the way. The floor washer grumbled and swore at me. I apologized, but I sounded glib, like some callous twit who chirps, "Sorry," after spilling India ink on your white linen slacks. Nancy L. Drew was about to launch heartily into the second half of an enormous grinder, while Mr. Sham fussed daintily with a small Greek salad. Nancy stopped mid-bite when she saw me approaching. Perhaps she was shy to eat in front of me, a relative stranger. Or maybe she didn't care to disclose one of her obvious secrets, the fact that she consumed piles of food. I greeted them brightly. "How are the Hollywood writer and Key West most powerful attorney?" Edsel smiled and replied that life was beautiful. Nancy Drew held her sandwich to her mouth, caught at a freeze frame, while she scrutinized me. I said, "I'm not interrupting anything important, am I? Are you 2 chewing as friends, or is this a power snack?" Nancy L. Drew put her sandwich down. I said to her, "What's new with Mindful Lotus?" A mask appeared on her face, the one that made her an attorney and not a human being, and thus she remained mute. I went on. Did you and Ken Kimball work out that problem with the Gulf Coast Playhouse? He said there might be a conflict of interest with because of your judge." Nancy L. Drew replied coldly, "This is harassment." But Edsel asked her, "When did you see Ken?" Nancy didn't answer him, so I did. "Earlier today," I said. "How do you know about it?" he said to me. "I was there," Nancy L. Drew said brusquely. "This discussion is completely inappropriate." "Not really," I said. "A conflict of interest for a big lawyer in a small town is pretty much everybody's business." Edsel said to her, "You didn't tell me you talked to Ken." Nancy Drew advised him to shut up. "Okay," I said. "Let's forget Mindful Lotus for now. Let's talk about people. Who's alive and who's dead? Who's winning and who lost?" Nancy asked Edsel to call the police. He told her to calm down. I said, "Someone killed Augusta Willits, and someone killed Adolf Doberman. All of us know it wasn't Jerry Takir." "Why not?" said Edsel. "No real evidence," I said, "and no motive either. Besides, she's an artist." "So?" he said. "Artists are passionate people, capable of thoughts and deeds unknown to ordinary folks." "So are writers," I said. "Maybe you did it." Nancy Drew interrupted. "Don't talk to him, Ed. I'll get a restraining order on him first thing tomorrow." But instead of agreeing with her, Edsel said, "Loosen up, Nancy. Let's have a little fun with him. He must have been bored. This poor young man is confused. Perhaps we can set him straight once and for all." He sniggered and added, "I don't mean sexually, of course, but let's say, just for the sake of a little party game, that I did it, okay? I killed Augusta Willits. So, Mr. Sherlock Holmes from Boston, what is my motive?" "Yours is connected to the Gulf Coast Playhouse." "Is that the best you can do?" And that's what my instinct tells me. Instinct leaves so much room for error. Actually, none, I said. If you listen honestly. Nancy L. Drew added, everything is instinctive. You just have to make choices. Her observation sent me into momentary mental orbit. Edsel said, all right, Stan, I'll level with you. Here's my real motive, and this is the truth. Yes, I was supposed to inherit one half of the Gulf Coast Playhouse from Peter Willits. But Peter's mother contested the will, so I killed her to make sure I got the playhouse. But it didn't work. End of story. All of this is moot, said Nancy Drew. You did not kill Augusta Willits to get the playhouse because it was already part of her estate. And why did you appeal that award? I said. In a case like that, said Nancy L. Drew, the judge's decision is final. Sounds like a TV game show, I said. Edsel laughed and said to me, well, if you want to continue your game, you'll have to include Kim Kimball among your suspects, too. I do, I said, along with everyone else who was supposed to inherit property from Peter Willits. Jerry Takir is on that list, said Edsel. But she's not connected to Mindful Lotus, I said. Well, the rest of you are, however, indirectly. He said, Laura Hope isn't. No, I said, she isn't. At least not yet. Neither is the Countess. I said, I'm not so sure. Then Nancy Drew fairly shouted, this is really inappropriate. The owner of the Paradise Deli called out that my sandwich was ready. I nodded and waved. Then I turned back to Edsel and Nancy. She had picked up her sandwich again, but he seemed eager to continue our game. He grinned broadly and said, okay, Stan, here's the other half of my confession. Ken is my partner in crime, theatrically speaking. We're a team, like the Luntz, or May, and Nichols, Comden and Green, Cronin and Tandy. We're part of that great tradition. They were all performers, I said. We are too, said Edsel. Ken and I both have purely selfish motives to preserve the playhouse. I've always wanted to write for the stage, and Ken has always wanted to establish himself as, I believe he puts it, a credible and legitimate theatrical force. And what easier way to build a reputation than in one's own theater? And that's our personal motive for wanting to save the playhouse. Beyond its historical and cultural value, and Nancy represents us in our efforts to regain what is rightfully ours. So, there you have it. He puffed a big black olive into his mouth and chewed. Now, he said, what do you propose for our next round? I'm curious about your other partner, Adolf Doberman. Nancy L. Drew continued chewing mutely on her sandwich. I said, the two of you and Adolf were always meeting together in public, and now it's just the two of you. So I have to wonder, what did Herr Doberman do to get himself eliminated from the snug little scenario you've created with Mindful Lotus? The buzzword scenario caught Nancy Drew's attention. Enough, she said. Any further discussion of this matter in my presence is unethical. What's unethical, I said, is you're representing both Mindful Lotus and Peter Willits' estate. Edsel added, don't forget Jerry Takir. Nancy L. Drew glared at him. Hey, yelled the owner of the deli. You want this sandwich or not? We're closed now. Edsel said to me, too bad, Stan. I guess you'll have to leave. We must do this again sometime. What about you two? I said. Nancy and I have arranged to stay here after closing. Nancy L. Drew said, for some privacy? I sensed I wouldn't squeeze much more from these two. So I took my sandwich and a beer and headed for the door. As I left the place, I turned back to Edsel and said, how do you like Joshua's driving? He replied. Isn't he driving you now in that pink car? You've been hallucinating, said Edsel. I could swear that's what I heard. And you believed it. Why not? I said. He replied, do you see a pink car out anywhere inside? Maybe Joshua dropped you off and he's waiting for you to phone him to pick you up. You all have cellular phones. And his laugh stopped me. You have an explanation for everything, don't you? I try. I sensed that he thought he'd dismiss me with that laugh, but on Nancy Drew's face I saw a worried look. I left them to continue their secret deliberations, and I drove myself out to a deserted area near the electric power plant. I wanted to watch the sun go down, but far from the maddening crowd that gathered every night to witness the event behind old Mallory Square. I parked the Alpha and climbed along some rocks that formed a jetty out onto the water, along with my sandwich and beer. I sat and watched the sun descend slowly into the Gulf of Mexico, its shape refracting and distorting like a cosmic egg yolk. As it sank into the water, I thought of my dead lover, and how seldom we'd shared the typical romantic moments. Things like watching the sun go down, or the moon come up, or the clouds, or the stars. Our time with each other had been spent mostly in sex, and the intervening moments spent with the physical and emotional preparation for the next randy session. There had been almost no quiet growth together, the stuff the lifelong marriages were made of. I had expected it was going to happen later, as if by magic, when we grew old together and discovered that we really did love each other, beyond the obvious response of our organs. But we never got the chance to find out. All I had was the remembrance of delirious orgasms past. That and $4.5 million. The sun finally submerged into the glassy water. I finished half my sandwich, threw the rest along the rocks for the gulls to enjoy, and then headed back to my car. As I was walking along the narrow road and to get there, I heard another car approaching. It tooted its horn friendly-like, as if to alert me of its arrival. I turned to see the pink taxi cab approaching me. I waved at it to signal Joshua to stop. But instead of slowing down, the taxi cab revved its engine to a roar, then engaged its tires with a terrific squeal and came charging at me. I froze in its path like a startled animal. Instinct wasn't kicking in the way it was supposed to. "Come on, legs. He is going to hit you. Save me!" But nothing happened until the image of Sugar Baby flashed before me, pining for me in Rehoboth, New Jersey, and then with one vigorous cat-like spring, I leaped from the road into the dense foliage along the side. The cab sped away. I caught my breath. I was saved for the moment, but the cab screeched to a halt and went into reverse. And then backup lights ablaze, it careened toward me again. But I had the advantage, for the back windshield was opaque, like the side windows, and Joshua could barely see through it. He'd have to rely on the outside rearview mirrors. As long as I kept myself out of their range, I was somewhat safe. Still in reverse, the cab swerved erratically out of control, trying to locate me in the dimness. I sought shelter by dashing back to the shoreline and scrambled along the rocks in the opposite direction. I headed toward the waterfront, which would be safer and more populated behind me, though. Through the still night air, I heard the thud and crunch and groan of metal against metal. Joshua was destroying the Alpha, which I had left parked along the side of the road, alone and vulnerable. I found a payphone and called Lieutenant Sanfuentes at the police station. I'd neglected to memorize his private beeper number, so I had to go through the ordinary channels, but the lieutenant had gone home. The nerve, keeping regular hours. I left a message for him to call me at the guest house. Then I headed back there myself, looking behind myself all the way. Up in the room, I phoned Nicole in Boston, but her answering service told me she was unavailable. I turned on the television set, but nothing appealed to me. I finally gave up and showered, and cleaned my teeth and tried to settle down with Edsel Sham's book. But even that couldn't put me to sleep. The phone rang about an hour later. It was Lieutenant Sanfuentes. I told him what had happened and where. He said he'd send a crew out and have a look. I also mentioned what had transpired shortly before in the deli with Edsel and Nancy L. Drew. Sanfuentes said, "You think the two events are connected?" "Why not?" I said. "Everyone's got portable phones. It would be easy for Edsel or Nancy to alert Joshua that I'd left the deli with a sandwich and beer." I could almost see him shrug. "I don't know, Stan. Sounds to me more like maybe you found a way to get Joshua really mad at you." His voice had that insinuating curlicue in it. "Like what?" I said. "Haven't you been talking to his wife?" "Is that a crime?" "Depends," said the cop. "Will you arrest Joshua?" I said. "We'll find him first and talk to him, then we'll see." "But he tried to kill me," I said. "You already told me that," said Sanfuentes. "What if he decides to come here and get me?" Sanfuentes said. "Then I'd suggest you stay alert. Don't go out, though. I'll call you as soon as my men have anything." "Thanks," I said, but I wasn't exactly relieved. As it turned out, Lieutenant Sanfuentes didn't call back that night, nor did I go out. So it was back to the good old days, just me alone, I didn't even have my cat there to purr contentedly in my lap while I tatted shade pools for the local churchwoman's auxiliary. Some vacation. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.